The memories grew fainter with each year they kept me. I'd look through my window and watch the world go by. Children would skip to school, hand in hand with their parents, and I wasn't even sure which I identified with. Sometimes the answer seemed simple. I played with toys, laughed at fart jokes, and kissed my parents goodnight. Emotionally, I should be in school. Physically, I belonged there. On an intellectual level, I felt more the parent. I could do math equations that made my parents wince. I understood how to manage money, prompting my parents to begin a bank account for me. And I could see the potential in the future I would never know. I saw myself hugging a girl to me while we argued over what we would name our child. I had so much time for thinking. Too much. In the past 30 years, I hadn't been allowed to do much else. Should we say anything? I could hear footsteps. Do we tell him? Quiet. He can probably hear us now. Dad's voice was gravelly. He cleared his throat. James? I edged away from the door. Their scent filled my nose, hot and salty. My stomach seized. I gripped the end of my bed. The footsteps faltered outside my door. James, we're coming in. There was a series of clinking sounds. After 2 minutes, I heard the lock thud to the ground. The door was stainless steel, and it swung inwards, revealing Dad's lined face. Mum hovered behind him, face framed by a silvery bob. Her glasses glinted as she entered, clinging to my father's shoulder. I have a present for you. It's from your brother. She stepped out. She held out a glossy red bag. It was funny how they still thought red was my favorite color. I took the bag. Saliva trickled from the corners of my mouth. Their scent filled the room, and my head spun. I peered into the bag. There was a stuffed monkey, a video game, and a card. I took the card out. He asked us not to read it. Mom looked at Dad. But I think I know what it says. Maybe he shouldn't know. Dad reached for the card. I took 3 steps back. My fangs pressed into my lower lip. No, let him read it. If Mark wants to tell him, he has that right. And no, Joan, we're not having that argument again. We can't keep him locked up forever. He's still a little boy. It's not as if he can get a job or take up a mortgage, and there's really no point in him going to school. He knows everything. I don't want to go to school. My voice was hard. But, Mom shook her head. Don't you want to play with other children your age? Why? They would only grow up someday, wouldn't they? It's not just that, Dad said. He can control himself, Mum glared, and we won't be... I froze. They're going to die one day. My eyes stung. I blinked rapidly. They didn't need to see me cry blood. I opened the card. I could feel their eyes boring into me. Mark had never sent me a letter, only gifts. I hadn't seen him since... A photograph slid out. I caught it. 2 identical boys sat on a bench, trees forming a background. They had blue eyes and sandy hair that waved to their shoulders. The differences were subtle. A stranger wouldn't have seen them. The boy on the right smiled more, one side of his mouth quirking up above the other. His hair was longer by an inch. The boy on the left had a chunk of his shorts clamped in a fist. The smile didn't meet his eyes. I wonder if Mark is still a nervous wreck. Anxiety doesn't improve with age, does it? The boys were 7, the same age I was now. I flipped the photograph over. October 16th, 1988. I remember that picture. Mum smiled. I opened the card. James, I've missed you. I know it seems like I don't, but you should know that it was more Dad's idea than mine. He was worried you would hurt me, and yourself, if something happened. I tried to send you presents, to tell you in small ways that I still loved you. And now that you're older, you deserve to know. I've seen the worry in Mum's eyes. They can't keep you forever. Without them, I'm your only family. I would take you in, and we could be together again. But if you're going to live with me, you need to know that it won't just be us. I've met a girl. Her name is Cammie. We're getting married in the fall, but I've told her about you. She didn't believe me at first, but I was able to explain it to her. She wants to meet you, even knowing what you are. She likes the idea of having a child A little brother. She always wanted one when she was a kid, but her mother nearly died giving birth to her. They weren't going to be having more kids. Cammy has been to the doctor. They've assured her that she will have no problems, but she thought you could help us adjust to the idea. She wants to practice with you, but more than that, she wants a little brother, wants to meet the person who made up half my life when I was 7. She wants to know what it means to be my second half. Besides her, you're the only one who would know. I know that sounds corny, but those were her words. I realize it won't be like raising a normal child, but Cammy says that's better practice. She says if we have a kid with special needs, we'll be better prepared. We'll know how to adapt. Don't listen to Mom and Dad. You can stay with them for now, if you want, but my door is open. If they try to stop you, go anyways. It's not right for us to be apart. Even though I've changed, we're still twins. My pain is your pain, and vice versa. Sometimes I taste blood in my mouth. Sometimes I feel angry, like I could rip and tear. Sometimes I want to cry for no reason at all. It might sound hokey, but I really believe we're connected. No one understands the connection between twins, but I could swear I feel everything you do. If you don't want to come, I'll understand that. But I love you, James, and I think Cammy does too. It would mean the world to us if you came. Love, Mark. P.S. Dad said monkeys were your favorite again. I hope you like 'em. You used to look like a monkey when you'd hang upside down from the trees. James? Mum's voice was a whisper. I stared at Dad. You were going to keep this from me? He's told you about Cammy. That's not the half of it. Dad's face fell. It's out of the question. I told him. We're still your parents. He doesn't get to make those decisions. No, he doesn't. I returned the card to the bag. Dad exhaled, but I snarled. He said it was my choice. I'm not a child. But you are. You still play with stuffed animals. I don't care how bloody high your IQ is. I don't care if you breeze past Einstein. You'll always be a little boy, and there's no way to change that. And not just physically, mentally. Your brain is that of a kid. If that was different, if you still thought like an adult, then we could talk. But you're 7. You don't know what's best. My body trembled. In my mind's eye, I saw myself seizing the front of Dad's shirt. I heard the clunk as he hit the far wall. I shook my head. The saliva dribbled over my chin. I wiped it on my arm, an automatic gesture. My wrist came away red. I know what Mom was going to say. You're going to die someday. Mark's an adult. Or do you still see him as a child too? Mark is immature. Bullshit. Don't use that kind of language. He was the mature one. He's 40. You wouldn't tell him not to have his kid, would you? That's what they're planning. It's not the same. You're not... I can control myself. I looked away. If I couldn't, you'd be dead already. Mom blanched, but Dad reddened. Are you threatening me, young man? No, I'm stating a fact. My hands trembled. I dropped the bag. I didn't want to tear Mark's gifts up. I want to kill you, but I don't. Does that make sense? Let's give him time to think about this. Mum tugged on Dad's sleeve. Let him calm down. No, he'll think up a scheme. That's a little sophisticated for a 7-year-old, isn't it? I arched an eyebrow. It's not as if I think like an adult or anything. Malcolm, please. Dad shook Mum off. Sit down. I'm not staying here. God damn it, you listen to me. I snatched up the bag and shot past Dad. It was one movement, one which carried me down the stairs into the foyer. Beside me, the window exploded. Dad skidded to a halt. He paused to load a second bullet into the rifle. No! Mum threw her arms out, her chest inches from the barrel. Move out of the way. You aren't murdering our child. He's not a child. He's a monster with a child's mind. My hand froze on the doorknob. How can you... Malcolm, is that really what you think? A single blood tear ran down my cheek. I tasted it when it reached my chin. You bastard. No, James, no, he didn't mean it that way. Don't fight. We can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Dad pointed the gun at me. Go back to your room. I flew at him. The floor cracked where I'd stood. I flew at his left side. I heard a crunch as he smashed into a cupboard. China rained over him. He shielded his face, groaning. With one hand, I lifted him up. His feet brushed past my torso. They felt like feathers. The gun clattered to the ground. I hoisted it up so that his head brushed the ceiling. Is that what you think? The force of my shout burned my throat. No, his fingers scrabbled at my hand. Yes, in a way. It's you, but not really. He seemed to sail through the air in slow motion. He flew through the window. The clink of shattering glass buzzed in my ears. He went through the opening, face scrunched in on itself. He was red, his eyes wet and closed. Every detail stood out. His blood along the jagged shards. His scuffed boots, the tear in his shirt seeping red. His thin hair tinted pink. The glint of his wedding ring loose on an old man's brittle finger. And his glasses, flying off as he fell. He hit the ground with a thud. I tore the door from its hinges. Mum screamed as it crashed to the ground. It was splintered along the edges. Dad lied on his back, right hand twitching. My foot crunched over his glasses, and I smiled. I'm not paying for those. Dad's eyes opened. You're going to kill me? Your own father? No, my voice was monotone. The tear had already dried. It felt like crusted paint. Exhaustion seeped through me as the anger faded. That's what a monster would do. I'm sorry. I don't want to talk to you right now. It would only make me mad again. If there are medical expenses, I'll pay those. I stepped over him. The rain misted over me as I straggled through the yard. I paused at the sidewalk. It felt like I was dreaming. I repeated my brother's address in my mind. After half a minute, I was running. It would take 10 minutes at the most. I scaled the apartment. I sniffed the walls. Scents swirled around me, too tangled to be appealing. Many of them were tinted with pot or alcohol. These were mildly repulsive. 210, I said. I sniffed the balcony. I didn't know the floral scent, but it was mixed with another that was close to Dad's, but more minty. I landed in the porch. I pushed the door open. A football player ran across the television. The faded cheers of the spectators filled the room. It was warm, and the scent of coffee tickled my nose. No, he isn't. A man's voice came from the kitchen. I'll let you know. The man sighed. I passed the couch and the bookshelves. They lined every wall. Records sat in one corner, beside a record player. Potted plants dominated a set of black shelves, as well as every other corner. There was a yowl. A ginger cat hissed. Its back arched as I looked at it. It hissed again, fur bristling. Mitzi, what's wrong? The man left the kitchen. His jaw dropped as our eyes met. James? He flicked the light on. I stared at him. It was hard to breathe. This can't be Mark. That's not what he looks like. It's a friend. He's too... The blue eyes widened. The hair was brown, but peppered with gray. The thin face had faint lines. He shook his head. What happened to you? You... I gaped. You're... Don't you recognize me? It's Mark, I swear. You're so old. Gee, thanks. Nice to see you too. But you are. I stepped towards him. You're older than I expected. I thought you'd look... James, he grinned. I'm not 20 anymore. You don't wear glasses, do you? No, but Cammy does. Cammy. I said the name like it was a foreign word. Your girlfriend. His fiancée. A girl stepped into view. Brown hair waved past her shoulders. Glasses sat on her beak nose. Her cheeks were like a chipmunk's, wide and round. I imagined you as blonde. Mark laughed. You're a clever monkey, aren't you? Monkey. Cammy flew forward. Nice to meet you. She held a hand out. I stared at her as I took it. I'm covered in blood. But not enough to indicate you've killed anyone. Your dad already phoned. He has to get a stitch in his left shoulder. She sounded cheerful as she spoke. You're a weirdo. Warmth seeped into my cheeks. And pretty. You should clean up, Mark said. They ate in silence while I watched. The kitchen was tiny, the counters and the fridge hugging the table. The macaroni smelled cheesy, but not tasty. Instead, their scents made my mouth water further as the salt entered their bloodstream. I could hear the thrum of Cammie's heart, like a bird's. Mark's was closer to the cat's. Mitzi hid in their bedroom. The cat doesn't like me. She'll get used to you. Cammie spoke with her mouth full. She blushed and swallowed. Sorry, I'm just excited. To have a vampire in your house? To have a kid? She chuckled. Didn't Mark tell you? I looked away. You're a beautiful girl. And you're adorable. I stood up. What's wrong? Mark's eyebrows mashed together. I flew into the bathroom. I gasped as I gripped the edges of the sink. I glanced at my expression. Hair tumbled into my eyes. They were a strange violet color, Mark's blue tinged with red. I ran a hand through my hair. I'm not a child. I sat on the edge of the tub, hands together. I'm not. I can't be. Children don't feel this. I thought of the monkey Mark had given me. I could see myself playing with it. Childish joy, loud in one note, erupted in my chest. Yes, I wanted to play with him. I wanted to try the new video game. I wanted to color a picture. I wanted to ask Mark to blow bubbles for me. I wanted to watch Elmo's World. Cammie's face blocked out my visions. She was pretty when she blushed. I can't be two things at once. Tears spurted over my cheeks. In the new vision, I'd torn the monkey up. I had one childish pang over that picture, but it was repressed by the one which took its place. My lips grazing a soft throat, hair tickling my ear, a floral scent, and my arms around a warm waist. I could feel the texture of the mouth against mine. We would lie together in the bed. I would undo a button. Shit. Mark opened the door. Are you okay? I don't think so. I stood up. I have to leave. What? What are you talking about? Please, don't go. I want to see you as much as your brother. Cammie's lips formed a bow. You want to see me? Stay. I cupped her face in my hands. Maybe I could. She brushed the hair from my eyes. I seized her face in my hands and kissed her. She laughed, but the sound cut off as I continued. She yelped. Stop it! What are you doing? Please, don't! Cammie shoved me away. That was weird. Don't touch her like that. I whirled around. Why shouldn't it be me? What do you have that I don't? I never asked for this. Keep control. I'm not a kid. Not all the time. I don't want this. I tore at my hair. She should love me. I'm the funny one. I'm the smart one. I don't vape. Really, James? You think that makes me some kind of loser? I think it's stupid. Mom doesn't like you doing it. It's dangerous. I know that. I wouldn't do that. I'd take care of her. I have common sense. Ray, you broke your foot climbing trees. His face hardened. You don't touch her. Do you understand? Unless she wants me to. You couldn't stop me then. No, I would never. Cammie put her hands up. Am I so repulsive? I'm not a pedophile. And I'm not a child. You're acting like one, Mark muttered. I'm supposed to just watch you two carry on into happily wedded bliss? I advanced on Cammie. If things had been different, it would be me. It should be. I'm the same age as him. If I had his body, you would choose me. Everyone always liked me more. I'm in love with Mark. Tears thickened her voice. It has nothing to do with his looks. I love him. You won't even give me a chance. Get to know me. Cammie shook her head. A choking sound came out of her. Her lips moved, but only moans followed. She coughed. Mark? Maybe someone your own age. I turned to Mark. No, that would make me a pedophile. Not necessarily. I exhaled. Sometimes I am a child. I play with action figures, and I laugh at fart jokes. But sometimes I'm an adult, and the part of me that sees someone else like... that part isn't a kid. I could never be attracted to an actual child. The idea is disgusting to me. It's disgusting to Cammie, too. You mean I'm disgusting? Mark watched me, face stony. I flew through the living room. Where are you going? I can't stay here. Please, Cammie hiccuped. I want you too much. I want your life. You would just see me as a kid, not someone we can figure something out. No one can fix this, or me. I'm broken. I met Mark's gaze. You don't change a child. You don't make it so someone can't live. A box of matches sat on the coffee table. I picked them up. The little sticks felt so tiny and breakable between my fingers. I lit one. The scent, so like candles in the fall, made me smile. I remembered the joy of trick-or-treating, of early twilight and fallen leaves. Memories were built on scents. I took a deep breath. The floral scent spun in my head as I drew the candle to my skin. No! Their faces crumpled. The fire writhed along my arms. It made my shirt pucker, blacken. I screamed as it ran up my neck and to my face. My arms flew out. I stared at the ceiling, eyes pooling with blood. I replayed her shattered face in my mind. The pain receded. I smiled. She cared that I was dying. It ripped at my legs. My tendons cracked, and I crumpled to the ground. The fire licked over my lips, my eyes. They seared in their sockets. Blindness followed. The pain vanished, and there was nothing. There was little. A picture frozen in time. There was Cammie's face, and her distant sobs. There were Mark's soft words. After a minute, those were gone too, but her face was my last moment. I saw the pain in it. How worth dying to see that.